You're listening to Data Center Therapy. Please take a number, and an engineer will be right with you.
Yeah, so welcome back, everyone, to Data Center Therapy, a podcast from iBoxing Consulting that talks all things IT with a healthy dose of empathy. I'm your host, Matt Yette, and today my co-host is none other than our very own Alec Taylor. So here at DCT, we dive into the wide range of technologies that make up this sandbox called IT that we all play in. We share our hopes and dreams, opinions, both positive and critical alike, all with a touch of empathy, because at the end of the day, we all need a seat on that couch. So today we're extremely excited about this episode as we have a very unique and special guest on the show today. The first ever Chief Software Officer for the U.S. Air Force and the Space Force. I mean, that you got to throw that in because that really has the shine in the pop. Nicolas Chaillan. Nick, how are you today?
Very good. Thanks for having me.
It's really an honor to have you on the show, sir. And Alec and I are super excited to chat with you. So I know that your time's valuable, limited, like everyone. So let's jump right into it. So you were the first ever CSO of the Air Force from August to September 18 to 21, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
How did you...
Actually, I was the first of the U.S. government entirely, but yes.
Yeah, so how does one... I mean, we're all in IT in various branches. How do you get from... starting out, how do you build your career to get to the point where the government's saying, hey, we need you to get control of the DoD here?
I don't know if there's a recipe for that, but I guess I started on the commercial side, started back in France. I moved here about 11 years ago. I'm 37 now. I created my first company. I was 15. I founded 12 companies. So I was lucky to make enough money not to care anymore about money and be able to want to make a difference. First at DHS, I was the chief architect and special advisor for cyber at DHS, brought Zero Trust and a lot of cool stuff at DHS 5 years ago, and then took the special advisor for DevSecOps role at the Office of the Secretary of Defense in DoD to bring DevSecOps to DoD, and that turned into a pretty cool engagement where we created this new office, the Chief Software Office, and I became the first CSO.
Oh, that's outstanding. So have they backfilled that role yet since you exited? So
we have now a DoD CSO for the entire department, and they are now interviewing people for the replacement for the Air Force and Space Force.
And hopefully they'll be empowered, because I know that was one of your main complaints in terms of, and I imagine it sounds impossible from my point of view between moving this ship, right? I mean, it's steering a ship, but being agile, which almost seemed to be conflicting in nature. And you want to jump in and boil the ocean, and that you've got a lot of frogs that would hop out too if you try to do such a thing. And that seems to be a lot of the core of what really kind of drove you to frustration at that point.
Yeah, it's a lot of silos and egos and reinventing the wheel and waste, and it's really tough to move fast, and getting everybody excited on the same page is almost impossible. So you have to lead the way, and you have to build capabilities and kind of show the light and show that it's possible, and then get more buy-in and people excited about what you're doing, and that's kind of what I did for 3 years. So.
And from a 3-year timeline standpoint, oh yeah, go ahead, Alec, jump in, please.
Yeah, no problem. If we unpack, and I would assume that you probably had some input in the order itself, or at least how it was to be executed. So this Executive Order 14028 that has come down from the White House, from the President, what involvement did you have in that? What are some of your thoughts on the content of that? Do you think that's going to get the job done? Is that a step in the right direction, or should we be going, a different path?
Yeah, I kind of pushed for that EO and helped write some of it, and really, there were two main focal point there with the Zero Trust mandate and the software bill of material push, and that was a big important push for us. We were already fully compliant in doing this stuff 2 years before the executive order, but I felt it was important that we have everybody else catch up, and make this a priority. So I think it's a it's a good first step. But the issue with executive orders is it comes unfunded. It's very difficult for agencies to execute, and unfortunately, the velocity of execution is just not where it needs to be. And my fear is that by the time they execute zero trust, it's going to be obsolete already. And so we need to learn to move much faster and not wait for these mandates to show up to start doing our jobs.
Right. Yeah. Eating healthy and getting plenty of rest should not come from an executive mandate from the government. These should be things that we do because they're great ideas. And it is a bit worrisome when we don't recognize those and need someone upon high to tell us or mandate those things. So did you work with NIST a lot on the zero trust standard and getting that published and ratified? Since so many of us here in North America, certainly the U.S., look to NIST for these standards, kind of how did that go down?
Yeah, I work a lot with NIST, both on the zero trust work, service mesh, DevSecOps, and even the revision 5 of the cyber framework and the 853 controls. I have a great relationship with a lot of the key doers of NIST that actually get stuff done. I'm a little bit concerned about the velocity and speed of some of the publications. Unfortunately, in the last few years, a lot of bureaucracy was added to the process, and you saw, revision 5 take over a year and a half to be approved between the time we wrote it and the time it was published, and that's really a disgrace.
It almost feels like generational, Alec. If I can jump in on on military capabilities, you hear about. Let's just take the analogy of a fighter jet, and you've got the 4th generation fighter, the 5th generation fighter, and it almost feels like the old way of doing things is the generational release of capabilities, where like Windows, you got XP, you've got Windows 7, and we don't need to compare the quality to a Windows operating release, but it's almost like fix the bugs in between, and then you've got major features where, from a warfighting capability, that's detrimental, because if you aren't on the next generation, you are the old generation, and nothing in between. Is that kind of where Agile and the military meet, and that's the whole point of, rapid deployment and the speed of implementation?
Yeah, I think the more you start, breaking down monolithic systems into Lego blocks, and the more you can continuously deliver capabilities in production in the hands of the warfighter, getting faster feedback loop, and making sure you're not wasting time and money, and delivering better capabilities with better feedback and faster deployment loops, where you get that accelerated feedback, and you can fail fast but fail small, and learn fast and don't fail twice for the same reason. That's really the only way to build software in 2021 and beyond, and it's been the case for many years already. And so, there's a pretty hard awakening in the department when it comes to that agile adoption, because people often have no training in agile and assume that you're going to move fast, you're going to trip down, and you're going to fall and not be able to stand back up. Where really the concept of small incremental delivery of value means that you never fall down to the point where you can't stand back up. You're just going to be able to fix it very rapidly, because it's an incremental delivery of value. And particularly for weapons, people, of course, and we all care about security and safety of these capabilities, but I would argue it's actually safer. You see, SpaceX able to do 3 hardware loop testing a day, 17,000 build of the software a day, and update the software the day before the launch. Where we used to put a 60-day freeze on the updates, which often led to the fact that the Air Force launches with SpaceX were actually less secure, because we were using code that was older than the latest version they were using for the commercial launches, with more bugs that were fixed already. So we managed to remove that freeze. But that's a good example of where agility in the right context can actually increase security.
I mean, imagine having to change a parameter the day before a NASA scheduled launch. That launch is scrubbed. It's not taking off that next day anymore.
Right. Yep.
Well, it seems like, making laws and ratifying our Constitution should happen slowly with lots of involvement.
Right.
Implementing microsegmentation technology is not modifying our Constitution. So there are parts that should go slowly for the greater good of our country, and there are things that need to be done rapidly. Like, imagine if there was a committee that had to be consulted every time the police were scrambled to respond to an emergency incident. How terrible that would be. So I think we hear what you're calling for loud and clear, and that is, let's be rapid, let's be innovative, let's compete with the commercial guys when it comes to failing frequently, failing often, iterating through change loops, and let's leave the slow-moving things to large-scale political shifts that maybe should move at a bit more of a glacial pace. And it sounds like what you're saying is that lack of agility, the silos, the politics, the people leaning on how we've always done it, are really the risks. Would you say that is what kept you up at night more than any other thing that, of course, you can talk about that's not classified? Or was there something else that really had you up at 2 o'clock in the morning, staring at the ceiling, ruminating on a path forward?
Well, I think there's the complacency that I see where people also used to the U.S. winning, although I'm not so sure we've been winning as much as we think we've been winning, if you look at Afghanistan, for example. But I think there's this complacency because we've not seen, the U.S. Being attacked here on its soil ever. And so in Europe, people still remember. I remember talking to my grandma about the Germans that invaded, France during World War II and stuff, and she was telling me crazy stories of her with the Germans, and that's something people kind of remember, right? And just this complacency and calling, China a near-peer adversary, and calling kind of all these Sputnik moments, with hypersonic launches and quantum compute and all these different things that China has been leading and doing, and particularly when it's leading in some of the most important innovation sectors that will enable any nation to control the planet down the road, and we keep dismissing or not really understanding as well as we should the importance of it, and calling it almost Sputnik moment. And you see the chairman of the Joint Staff, not recognize that this is a big deal. I hope he doesn't mean it, and he's just saying that for the public. But I'm afraid the level of incompetence is high enough that the complacency is pretty much set in stone. So that's pretty scary as well.
Yeah, the complacency and the hubris is a huge blind spot for us.
It feels like in years past we had the technical know-how, but we also had the resources in America, that is, where the old way of doing things, our simple might got us through that, and our ingenuity, where now the technological advances have closed the gap, where even because of the advancements in computing, the base assumption changes. Even a weak adversary has got a capability that they didn't have 30 or 40 years ago, just by the nature of this common off-the-shelf compute power. And so I think you're right. There's that complacency that's built in where you can't rest on your laurels. And we've been able to up to this point because we've been the only ones with a certain amount of tech. And now you're seeing the proliferation of that just in basis off-the-shelf hardware. And anybody can be a threat now with the dedication. And I was going to use that word as well, Alec. It was well put, as hubris. That's kind of the sense that I'm getting to as a citizen.
Yes.
So, Nicholas, if we were to continue on the path that we are today, and I'll include in that not only our government's choices with regards to technology, but also commercial entities, right? Customers that we work with that have still not rolled out strong identity and access management, have not, if we kind of break down NIST Zero Trust into maybe 6 tenets, I don't know that any one of those has really been fully implemented at the majority of our customers. So cybercrime, ransomware is rampant, and there is a distinct shortage of expertise, leadership, really specifically, to help customers get through this process and recognize the value. Since many of our commercial customers are so obsessed with business agility that they are taking off their seatbelt and not wearing protective eyewear, right? And I think they're just in a race for disaster because of this agility. Where do you see us in 5 years as a country as it relates to our technological might and threats, as well as what's happening in the commercial space, if we kind of continue on with this path of slow moving, not prioritizing security, not prioritizing engineering best practices for infrastructure and software?
I'm concerned about cyber, but at the same time, we're lacking, right, is when companies refuse to partner with the DoD to innovate when it comes to AI and different things. Where U.S. companies are leading compared to Chinese companies. Of course, China is mandating their Chinese companies to work with them and get access to all the data, but also they're stealing all the IP from the U.S. companies as well. So they have full access to the best of breed AI capabilities. Meanwhile, the Pentagon is stuck 20 years behind. So there's this first step of even before even cyber matters. If there is no public-private partnership, I don't believe we have a shot at anything. And you're going to see China take over Taiwan, and all they got to do is shut off some of the U.S. grid, and we're going to be so busy trying to fix that we're not going to be able to go and help Taiwan whatsoever. So I think days of having spent time at DHS, the cyber defense of critical infrastructure is criminal. It's the fact that 5 years ago, DHS leaders told me that they did not believe in zero trust and refused to implement zero trust when I was there, pushing the zero trust implementation from with my partnership with many companies, including Google, with Beyond Cope and all the very first zero trust implementation at the time. If we had done that 5 years ago, we'll be in a much better shape. So people, of course, then move forward and end up getting awards of the year and for doing the opposite of what their job should be about, and yet win all the awards and move on with their lives, selling now consulting to go and sell to companies zero trust, right? It's just, if you tell the story, people wouldn't believe it, and these same people that refused to implement zero trust and didn't believe in it now are trying to sell it to you. That's always interesting. And so I implemented the largest implementation of zero trust in any organization by doing it, with the DoD and the Air Force Space Force zero trust implementation, and we did it in 18 months. It's very mature. It's not the basics of zero trust. It's pretty advanced. So it is possible, right? And so I'm afraid that before you even think of cyber defense, if there's no two-way partnership between private and public sector, there's not going to be, none of this is going to matter, because we're going to be such in trouble with China that maybe it won't matter at all. And that's the first piece. The second piece is, you were talking about the tech debt and all this cyber debt. Effectively, people feel like they're moving fast, but cyber is not all of it. There's also a drastic technical debt when it comes to architecture, getting locked into cloud providers, not having the ability to deploy in a DevSecOps manner, which leads to very half-baked ability to move fast and move at the pace of relevance, and a lot of tech debt in terms of productivity and the ability to deliver value to the customers. So I would argue, there's not enough investment in DevSecOps, which would solve a lot of the cyber stuff, by the way, as a ripple effect, by bringing zero trust and all that stuff. But but I think first is we have to fix how we innovate, how we build innovation. Large commercial companies are mostly failing right now and rely on buying companies and assets from smaller companies to innovate. That's really not very smart. And then on top of that, like I said, the wall between the U.S. government and the companies is massive, and that's really going to get us.
Yeah, so I think we've all quit jobs in the past, and there's always a decision to make whether or not to help the company you're leaving, right, Alec? I mean, it's do they deserve my knowledge kind of thing. And Alec himself started iVoxy because his prior employer refused to get on board the virtualization bandwagon back when it was really percolating, and it turned out to, Alec was looking in the right direction. I've read that you are scheduled. I don't know if there's a date. Is testifying to Congress still on track? Are we going to hear this in a more public? I mean, I know you've been out there doing interview circuits, which is awesome because the citizen base needs to know about this. But I read that you were going to be testifying to Congress. Is that still on track?
Well, I've been pushing, but the issue is I'm asking for both the classified and unclassified settings so people can hear enough about this, right? If we're going to overclassify everything and play that game, I'm just not interested, So I don't see a lot of urgency to do that or do any of it for that matter. And the issue with Congress, of course.
But there's only one?
Well, the big one here at least is the lobby.
You can only fix so many things.
Yeah, the lobbies are just not too excited about me disrupting a little bit the monopoly and bubble of the defense industrial base, and the fact that we need to shake things up and even rethink how we fund things from a Congress standpoint. Having to go through a budget cycle and 5-year ahead and all this nonsense is just not going to fly anymore. We need to learn to implement end-to-end agile in acquisition and contracting and all the way to budget planning and Congress. So a lot of people would rather not have the conversation, so.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, it seems like in a lot of your writings, a theme that kept coming up repeatedly was there was so much of an attitude that, oh, we're too big. It's too big of an organization. Why even try? And with that attitude right out of the gate, you're going to fail. And I can imagine how that can be incredibly frustrating, but that's just, you need to live that short-term pain for the long-term gain, right? It sounds so simple, but it must just be maddening. You say you're 37, you probably feel 57 after 3 years working in that environment.
Well, it's kind of the problem, right, with this bubble of DoD, right? It's I guess it's also the same with Congress and having no term limits and no one leaving and coming back and going do real work outside of the bubble and come back into the department. I was becoming myself stale and behind, and I was becoming almost used to the lack of pace, and I was getting used to that speed and not even demanding faster speed, and I was adjusting my expectation to the building. So I think it's kind of the problem, how do you expect these people not to be jaded after spending 20 years in the building? So that's where, people like that should leave. Unfortunately, they live such in this, bubble that they don't even realize there's a market outside of the defense, that there is healthcare and retail and banking and space, commercial space and other things they could be doing, which I was doing. I've never done none of my companies was doing business with the U.S. government whatsoever, and was always helpful not to have a conflict of interest. Also, having made enough money not to care about what is it I'm going to do next. When I started to be a little bit vocal about me leaving, people were reaching out to me and telling me, "Oh, you're burning bridges. You're not going to find a job anymore ever again." And not only that's false, but even if it was true, I couldn't care less. But most people, of course, can't afford that. But that's where, if we had a better way to leave and come back and not lose clearances and have a way to have these people spend even 2 weeks at SpaceX, I can tell you most of their heads would explode.
So what do you feel, so for our listeners who are struggling with where to start, right? Those, we have folks that listen that are large financial institutions, small accounting firms. And our message to our customers is, it's not about how big you are, it's about the size of the risk and the volatility of the data that you manage, right? It's a little bit like a nuclear breach. It does not take a lot of cesium or a lot of enriched uranium to make its way out into the environment to become problematic and toxic and have us wish that, much like Chernobyl, maybe we contained the problem rather than trying to clean it up.
Right.
So for those who are struggling with where to start, we know we need to secure things. We know we don't have great policies. We know that email is a vulnerability. We know that there are folks who are trying to extort us for $30,000, $300,000, $3 million. Where would you suggest that they start getting on track with a good cybersecurity strategy, maybe some technologies or some designs to look at? If you were their CTO or you were their CISO, where would you begin?
Well, unfortunately, most companies are not even implementing the basics of cyber life, and there's a couple of very basic things that would really prevent a lot of the issues. The couple of initial investment is that are really important is having a proper identity management stack and really having a good single sign-on stack with multi-factor authentication. You start there, you're already in pretty good shape. Then you move away from VPNs and you start adopting software-defined perimeter and having the ability to micro-segment and have the capability on clouds and on-premise and on mobile and stuff. So, I think there are a couple of companies like AppGate and Zscaler and others that are doing a very good job there when it comes to bringing kind of a turnkey thing that you don't have to, reinvent and deploy. You, of course, basic endpoint protection installed on mobile and laptops and devices. Proper patching and updating of dependencies and software. It depends of course what it is they do. What is the crown jewel and what's the priority? I'm always afraid of the containment thing, you were mentioning with even Chernobyl, right? It's already started to leak and become a problem. So I don't know how long we can actually contain problems. I think that's probably a short-term thing, which is fine, but I don't think that's a long-term solution. So people are going to have to think beyond that, and that's kind of the issue. People are so focused on their next quarter and revenue, and they just dismiss problems. What they fail to realize is that might come back and buy them 10, 20, 100 times what it would have taken to fix it if they were proactive. So I think number one is being proactive over reactive is really the only way to succeed. When it comes to ransomware and stuff, I mean having basic email filtering and some decent training and some good endpoint protection capability, but there's a lot of thing that has to deal with people and training, and I think for me, I mean, depending on the organization, I used to give an hour a day to my people to learn. I think self-learning and investment in people is so important, and particularly with the pace of, particularly if you're in IT and you're dealing with engineers, you get stale very quickly. The velocity and speed of IT is multiplied. It's very difficult, right, for people to keep up and even first catch up and then keep up with what's going on. So I think investing in people is so critical as well.
So I hear education is huge. We can have all of the wonderful security tools and policies and procedures in place. But if our users don't understand how those work, or they create their own solutions for working around what they consider roadblocks for access, I'll just send this file that I can't send from corporate email through my personal Gmail account. What's the worst that could happen? I'm trying to get my job done, right? Mm-hmm. And education is huge. I'm really glad that you pointed that out. And shameless plug, that's a big part of our company's strategy. Whether it was virtualization 15 years ago that was really, really big for us, or information security today, this is not just about spending money on subscriptions and tools or cloud migrations. It is about all of the difficult challenges with information security, cybersecurity, which includes operationalizing it, wonderful. You have all of the right tools, a terrific design, but if you can't operate it, then you're dead in the water, right? Training your end users is huge, which is why we love NIST standards and ISO standards, because they call out training and require it. Leadership involvement. Leadership's got to get on board. They have to show us that there are regular meetings to talk about security issues and how things will be remediated, and going through audits. Going to the gym might not be fun. Eating granola instead of a chocolate eclair might not be the choice that we want today. But in 3 months or 6 months, we're going to really like the shape that we're in. And that's something that we preach regardless of what the technology is. Do you see those same challenges, certainly from a government perspective, around knowledge and being able to operationalize these technologies and these policies that get put into place?
Yeah, and it's kind of compounded by the silos and the fact that there's just not a single person that can make those decisions. Companies have a luxury of usually a pretty lean ability to mandate or make things happen when it comes to some of the basics of cyber we just talked about in ICAM and zero trust and proper data management and different things. The CIO usually has the right authorities. In DoD, the CIO is a policy shop that is actually not running and operating the IT of the department. So that's a very short-sighted and so weird way of thinking of those roles. That tells you that that's why you end up with people in many of these roles, with some exception, of course, but some of these roles that are just policy governance people with no actual hands-on experience on being an actual CIO.
So we've picked up the scab a bit here, Alec, in terms of the problems and the challenges. I know your time's valuable, Nick, so I want to make the best of it. So as we kind of turn the corner here and the last leg, I wanted to talk about a few of the accomplishments that you've called out and really geek out in terms of moving all the way to the end result, which really kind of made my eyes pop out, some of the things you called out. So I'm just going to list off 2 or 3 and then just want to chat about them a little bit. For one, you're able to bring Kubernetes to weapon systems, including jets and space systems, where we demonstrated that containerization was not only possible, but also game-changing on real-time OS and legacy hardware. I mean, that's super cool. You're bringing AI and ML capability to the jets to co-pilot the jets alongside our Air Force pilots. And then finally, this one blew my mind, pushing over-the-air software updates to weapon systems while flying the jet. Oh, here we are worried about, we got to put that server into maintenance mode because we want to make sure we maintain availability during these maintenance operations. And we're talking about flying jets and firmware updating our missiles on the fly. That's the kind of stuff that Agile can get you, is what you're saying. I mean, that's incredible.
Yeah, and that's why I was saying, I'm more concerned about the lack of adoption of DevSecOps than I am of the cyber posture of the companies and government organizations, because if you actually adjust to DevSecOps and you embrace DevSecOps, you're going to fix rapidly. In fact, the cyber posture we got with these DevSecOps platforms that run in production on the weapon, so it's part of the weapon. It's not just a development tool. They are way more advanced than most of the cyber defense I know, bringing moving target defense, bringing zero trust, bringing behavior detection and prevention capabilities, and really enforcement at the granular level, down to the container level, the function level. So there's a lot of great flexibility, and of course you abstracted, you're not getting locked into a single cloud provider or infrastructure. So there's so much benefit, and everything is infrastructure as code and push button deployment, and you have no drift between environments. You can deploy anywhere. A lot of the stuff we've done there was game changing, including demonstrating we could do this in 12 days, what you just described. Which you forgot to mention, which I think is even more cool.
Thank you for correcting me on that.
I think the 12-day piece is demonstrating, and it was on the U2 jet, which was 60 years old. That's another piece of detail that we can also mention. So once you can do that, and by the way, how do you compete if you cannot do that? If you look at Tesla, all the other car manufacturers are scrambling, trying to figure out how to do over-the-air update and how to do self-driving, and you cannot even get to self-driving without the over-the-air update because you don't have the fast updating cycle of the AI models, and you can learn and train your models and improve your models. And so AI, by definition, is going to require DevSecOps. And by the way, every time we put AI on a weapon like a jet, and we have the AI fly the jet every single time the U.S. pilots lost miserably because they couldn't compete with the AI pilot. So I would argue whoever is going to control AI is going to control the world. So if you can't deploy software rapidly without breaking your entire stack, and if you can't use AI, you are by definition already irrelevant. No matter the market, people, you were talking about accountants. I can tell you that within a few years, my bet is that accountants or most of the accounting work will be completely fully automated by AI. Look for a different job because you're going to need a new job because bookkeeping and data entry in accounting and all these things are going to be completely massively replaced. It's already happening massively with some of the new features in QuickBooks and others, right? FreshBooks and whatever the different companies innovating in the space. But you can see already like a lot of the auto labeling, picking automatically which account it should be in, and all these things that used to require humans. Oh, is that what kind of expense is this? Is that a is that a computer expense? Is that a IT expense? What is, is that a restaurant? What is it? And all this stuff is now automated, looking at, the description and using AI to auto label it, and it's getting better and better. And so, people that refuse to understand that AI is going to disrupt everything we know are going to be in a very, very hard awakening, more so than people that refuse to invest in cyber defense.
So Alec, if you were thinking about pivoting Ivoxy to an accounting firm, put a pin in that for now, I think.
Unfortunately, that has never been in the cards. But what it sounds like is we've all wanted to move higher up the stack, right? Get farther away from network ports and building VLANs and configuring routes, and closer to data, users, digital experience. So, these technologies are there to help free us or keep us captive, and kind of the choice is our own, right? Who works for who? How do you see the role of a traditional information technology team changing in the next 5 years? With so many of these things going cloud, potentially AI, automation, if people can get on board, what does the new role and profile of an IT professional look like in 2027? You think?
Well, I think you're gonna have to always go higher the stack, right? And so humans are gonna focus on stuff that AI cannot do, but I'm not gonna lie. I think at some point AI is gonna be able to do everything. So I don't know what we're gonna do, but I know Elon Musk was talking about. He's concerned that at some point humans are gonna have nothing to do because everything can be automated. So we're gonna have to find a way to keep people busy. But sadly, in the next 10 years at least, it's not gonna happen. But sadly, the basics of life will get more and more automated. And just look at the automotive industry. It's pretty insane now. Having a Tesla myself, like the ability of the self-driving capability now is mind-boggling, right? So people that used to dismiss it 5 years ago, and some still do now. I've yet to sit down in a Tesla. I used to drive 2 hours each way to the Pentagon every day, and I can tell you I never took over the AI one time. So that's a pretty good number right there, So
where do you see the U.S.'s biggest current existential threat when it comes to technology? Certainly, there is our ability to keep up with other nation states like China and Russia. There is, you had talked about issues securing intellectual property, right? So both government secrets and also, I've read countless articles about companies going out of business because China took their intellectual property. One gentleman who owned a wind turbine technology firm, China walked away with all of his software, and it was within a year that software was available at half the price from Chinese sourced and manufactured windmills, and then they were competing with him with his own intellectual property that they did not have to pay for, right? Just scary, scary stuff. Where do you see today's biggest threat from these nation states?
Well, that's why overall, already China is the most concerning nation, right? Because they are checking all the boxes. They're fighting smarter. When you see them negotiate the mining rights with the Taliban before the nation, before Afghanistan fell into their hands, and walk away with the mining rights that have a lot of the mining for all batteries, by the way, which we know, and CPUs and chips, and so it is very scary to do the same in Africa and pretty much everywhere else. They fight without fighting, right? We are at war with China, we just don't know it. And like you said, the IP theft is massive, way more than what people think. And it has a we dismiss it, but it has a massive impact. We gave them our entire supply chain, right? For everything, pretty much. We're completely dependent from healthcare to chips to car now that can go outside of their lots because they're waiting for that Chinese chips to arrive. It's just. I know, by the way, Taiwan is the second producer of chips, so you better defend them when we need to defend them. Otherwise, we're going to be in big trouble. And we kind of made that happen by outsourcing everything, allegedly saving some money in the process, but really long-term, again, very much like what you're describing companies doing, the government made exactly the same mistakes, short-term wins and savings for long-term destruction and disasters, right, by outsourcing the supply chain to China. So we kind of created all that, right? And so, if you look at the threat and you look at, what to worry about as a business, I think it's all about that complacency and that lack of proactivity, right? It's a vicious cycle. It's very easy, particularly if you're publicly traded or if you have investors, to try to please them with sales and unfortunately, I see a lot of business now and what wannabe entrepreneurs, I'll call them, that just care about the exit. They didn't even create a company; they're already talking about the exit before they even created the business. It's probably not a good idea. Because then the business they give away is designed on short-term thinking, right? So what's the real value of that, right?
Yeah. Well, Nick, this has been super enlightening. It's been a pleasure chatting with you. So you had said, and this is, I think, where we've all gotten in terms of, I want to have a lot of money so I don't have to worry about money. You said that, and that's kind of been my attitude as well. I'm not there yet, unfortunately, so kudos to you. But, okay, what...
So, Matt, here's what we're going to do when we're not recording anymore. We're going to get all of the good stock tips from him.
Well, secondarily, since Alex signs my checks, that's kind of my lever to put a little pressure on him there too, to maybe kind of give me a little boost. Anyway,
a little booster, yeah.
Yeah, right. What is next for you? Do you have something that you want to do? Do you have things? And obviously, you've got things in the hopper. And where do you see yourself? And not only one thing, right? I'm sure there's a lot of irons in the fire. But what's next for you?
Well, at some point, I'm going to be back in the government, that's for sure. In a pretty significant role, but probably maybe not soon, but soon enough.
We're looking at Nicolas Chaillan 2024 kind of thing. Is that we going there?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, hopefully sooner. Unless I think it would be sooner if something bad happens. So hopefully not. I think if right. Taiwan, if something happened in Taiwan, I think you're going to see me back sooner because people are going to realize, wait a minute, we need to wake up now. Otherwise, this might have to be with the next administration. But I'm just raising awareness. Joined a few boards. I'm learning to fly a plane, so that's fun.
Are you updating the software on it while piloting it at the same time?
No, there's no software. I don't know if there's software on this thing, but you look at the shape of it. I don't know if it even flies.
You got to eat your own dog food, right?
I know. First, I got to get my private, and then I'll even buy my plane and have some fun. But now I'm doing my private license and learning that. That's a lot of work. People compare it to driving. That's nothing to do with driving. That's completely foolish. It's way harder than that. So it's fun though.
Well, it sounds excellent. Alec, you are the most aerodynamic member of Ivoxy there. So have you ever thought about flying?
Yeah, I don't have. It's all about the drag and
the drag. Yeah.
Thank you for pointing out my aerodynamicness. I have soft curves and no hair, so I don't like to brag,
Well,
but I am
conversely, I'm
fairly
not joining the
winded.
swim team anytime soon with this thing holding me back, so.
Yeah, you're not gonna make it.
Nope.
That's...
Nick, it's been an absolute pleasure. We really appreciate you, dedicating some time to chat with us and kind of wanting to spread. We agree with your message, right? We're on board with that too. So we're excited to kind of hopefully give yet another forum to get the very important word out there. And it just so happens to jive with our industry too. So we were super excited about it on multiple fronts. So thanks again for joining us.
No, thanks for having me.